I have such a treat for you today. My guests today are Ardra Shephard and Alex Hajjar, who host the Tripping on Air podcast. Ardra is a writer, consultant, speaker, and badass that happens to have MS. Alex is a podcaster and an MS expert by marriage. He and his wife live in Canada, and Ardra does too. He has a unique insight on the partner perspective of living with MS. Welcome to you both.
Thanks for having us, Vickie. We're very happy to be here.
Yeah, thank you, Vickie.
I'd like to start with the exciting news that Ardra can now add author to her list of titles as she's penned her memoir, Fall-osophy, My Trip Through Life with MS, that's going to be released in the spring of 2025. Congratulations, Ardra.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited and also kind of nervous, but mostly excited.
I was able to get a sneak peek at a couple of chapters, and it is witty and sassy and dead honest about some of the unfortunate realities of living with MS. Tell us a little bit about writing the book.
Wow, it's been a long process for sure, but I think I took the approach with writing the book that I've always taken with the blog, which is to really tell it like it is. The sample chapters that you were provided, I think you're nodding to the fact that they're, pretty real and Rob, I didn't pick the sample chapters, my editor did, and so of course, the one she picks is about like bladder issues and peeing the bed and getting used to a catheter. And that's like, you can't get more real and exposed and raw than that. So, a lot has been written and talked about MS. And my approach with the book was the same with the blog of like, what can I say that hasn't already been said? What's the book that I needed to read when I was diagnosed? And even, the book that I kind of still need to read. So that's the approach, basically.
I love that. I think a lot of times we are confused, we're grieving, we're scared, and the realities of living with MS. If we have honesty and also a sense of humor about it, we can get used to almost anything, even bladder problems. So, you've been writing your blog, Tripping on Air, since I think 2015, and you started your podcast with Alex 2 years ago. Tell your viewers a bit about why you started both.
Well, the blog for me, I think, started for a bunch of reasons. I used to sing, and that was getting harder for me to do from an MS perspective. And so it was really trying to figure out what creative thing can I do next to kind of fill that void and satisfy that need for me. And like, what do I know? And I know about MS. My illness was also transitioning from a more invisible state to more apparent obvious signs of disability. So I was answering a lot of questions from people I knew but also from strangers, and so I thought it would be a way for me to kind of set the record straight. The podcast started a little bit differently. I was approached by the network AMI to do that podcast, and at first I was really hesitant because as a writer or a blogger, I feel like comfortable sharing, but in like a really controlled kind of way, like that I was nervous about with, a podcast just being off the cuff and even more vulnerable. So I was nervous to do that. It gave me great comfort to think that I would be sharing the platform with somebody like Alex, who, because there are also a lot of great MS podcasts out there. And I thought, how can this one be different? And I've often said, when you have MS, the whole house has MS, and let's bring in a partner perspective to see what that experience is like also. And so that's kind of how the podcast started and how Alex came into the picture. And it's been super rewarding. And it's a trip.
It is a trip. And, I found your blog years and years ago. And I think the one that has struck me the most was, Honey, I Wet the Bed. And it was so, I think it's one of your most favorite blog posts. And it was You're right. It's the whole family has it. It is in our entire house, and everyone that we're in contact with is experiencing this with us. So, Alex, you offer the unique perspective of being the spouse of someone with MS.
Hmm.
I often feel like our partners sometimes live in the shadow of these enormous letters, MS. What do you hope to bring to the MS community in your role in the podcast?
I think that I bring a perspective that maybe, like you said, is a bit overshadowed sometimes. Not to ring my own bell, but I think that all partners of people with disabilities are in some way or another, unsung heroes. Not just that MS lives in the house; it is a really shitty, if I can swear, I don't know.
You can.
Okay, okay. It's a really terrible roommate, and it doesn't contribute anything. It actually takes away loads of stuff, and it doesn't pay rent. So it's really an obnoxious roommate as well. But um, yeah, from the partner perspective, I mean, there are a lot of things that I think when people with disabilities encounter people without disabilities or without the experience of people with disabilities, in everyday life, there's a lot of assumptions, and so having someone by your side, I think, is very valuable because there's someone to confide in. We get each other, so you're not necessarily alone there. um the help is okay, but I think most people who have partners or want relationships with partners are going to have that cooperation anyways. I think um ultimately it's just there's someone there, like I said, to have that compassion, and that you're understood and it's a safe space for both parties and stuff like that. So um I'd like to think that I bring just an element of, like, elevating a voice that maybe doesn't get the limelight so much. Sorry, Ardra, I think you off.
Yeah, I would just love to jump in because one of the things that I really love about working with Alex is just how um, our chemistry and our natural friendship make the
Mm.
show really comfortable and fun. And because I feel like if we were having this conversation on our show, I would call you out for the unsung hero bullshit. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, I think you like
Call me out. Call me
exactly
out. It's
exactly what you said at the end of like, you are coping with this MS in a way that doesn't necessarily get the same support that the person with MS gets. But, as the person with MS, I feel like we're saying thank you all the time and we're saying please all the time. And the people around us are saying they are making you guys the sung heroes, like they're like,
yes,
oh, you're
yeah,
so
that's
lucky, blah, blah,
true.
blah. But I also want to add that, you know, I am lucky with the partner that I have. You and Nicole also have a really great relationship.
Mhm.
And that isn't always the case. So I think,
Yeah.
the other thing that you bring to the show, if I might add, is just, that ability to voice that it's hard for partners too. Because I think I often say, like, what gets measured gets managed. And,
Mhm.
partners, kids, anyone in the family has a right to also say, like, this sometimes sucks. And for me too. And, we all need to kind of support each other, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think I'm maybe not the first, but soon after, definitely one to say that I have put my foot in my mouth with things. I think all partners, it's a learning curve that we all exist on,
Totally.
right? So
Yeah.
I might say something that, like, Ardra will definitely give me a lesson on, and I'm happy to learn and take that on. And I think that's the best part. And yeah, if yeah, I think that's what I'm bringing, I guess. Yeah.
Anyway, I adore you and I love having you on the
Thank you.
show. I think it's like it's great, because we've talked about this before too, how Alex and I kind of have similar personality types and our
Mhm.
partners have similar personality. Like we're both
Yeah.
much more extroverted and our partners are introverted. And so I feel like um sometimes you're a voice for my husband in a way that he isn't for himself.
Yeah. That's a really cool thing to be. And that's primarily what I'm trying to talk about anyways. It's like when there are people who are partners and they're not maybe used to speaking up or having a voice, then my liking of the sound of my own voice is why I do it. So
And then there's me on behalf of Nicole saying like, unsung hero? I don't think so.
yeah, tisk tisk, yeah.
Yeah, I agree. My husband has played the supportive role for me so many times, and you're right, Alex. This unwelcome guest in our house who doesn't even bother to pay rent,
Right.
and MS is something that we all deal with, our entire family, anyone that lives with us or anyone who's associated with us. We're all managing it the best we can, and we're all learning along the way. My husband is definitely my sung hero, and Alex, you
Mhm.
need to sing.
I do, in fact, actually.
He does sing.
Mostly
Yeah,
backup
literally.
vocals. So yeah,
So
that's funny.
you describe your blog as as confessional and informational, and you like to talk shit about MS. I love that. Talking shit about our MS is a way that we can cope with it. Talk a little bit more about the parts of talking shit about MS and how that helps us cope.
I think there's this idea when we're first diagnosed anyway, and maybe things are starting to change, but there's this pressure to be this kind of palatable patient, like the plucky, optimistic, I can do hard things, easy to be around kind of patient. And that's a lot to put on yourself when you have MS. And I hope that what my voice does is say, like, it's okay to say it sucks when it sucks and to like grieve what you're going through. It helps you get through it. I think it helps you get on with it. I'm not saying live there, but I think it's important to voice all of our emotions in appropriate ways, and that's just like learning that you can complain about bad days and you can ask for what you need and you're not going to be abandoned. You're not gonna, not be loved, or your friends will still wanna spend time with you. Like, there's, a safety in knowing that, but it's not necessarily a given or a guarantee. Like, we haven't given people permission to express that yet, and so I think that's really important, and I try to do that, and sometimes it's even just, like, I have to take my own advice and remind myself of that, we're all kind of going through something. Everyone is.
Yeah, exactly. So, in when we're going through something, talk a bit about the most challenging parts of living with MS. Ardra, from the person who's living with it, and Alex, from the partner perspective, what has been the most
Mm.
challenging parts for you?
The most challenging part for me is always anxiety of what comes next. It's that fear of what's going to happen. And so, one of the benefits of having MS for over 20 years is having some of those worst case scenario daymares come true and realizing that I'm okay, that I can manage it, that I can handle it, that I still have joy in my life, that I still have like great relationships and great times. And so that is what I can tell myself. It's like that is what helps keep me keeps helps me manage fear of what comes next, and then also just not having the arrogance to presume that I know that my best days are behind me or that it gets worse. It's like have lived in that space for a long time, and so actually, I really have to say, like, well, how do I know that something amazing isn't coming around the corner? Like, how do I know, like, it is necessarily gonna get worse? There's really exciting, medication information, that's just come out in the last month about a new therapy that is gonna slow down progression, and I didn't think that was gonna come as soon as it is. I thought I'd be more disabled than I am now, and so we don't know. Life is full of surprises, and it's when you're kind of like a organized, controlling person, you like to think you know what's happening next, and you just don't. So it's humbling in that way. Alex, what do you?
That's probably the worst thing to have when you wanna be, if you're a perfectionist or yeah, you prefer order or something like that. Um, I would say similarly, it is about kinda what's coming next, but, um, as a partner, you want to be able, I think, to pick up the slack in a way. And again, I may not be saying the right things, but like, or in the right way, but I think like it's getting over the initial fear, right? I think, I mean, for me, my like everybody seems to have an aunt with MS. Actually had an aunt with MS,
I
and
am
so
the aunt with them.
yeah, you're like my cousin with MS. I did have an aunt actually though, but I do my
Yeah.
Ziamata anyways. And she's always been she's laughed the loudest, and she's like the nicest person, and she's more like a friend actually. She's so easy to talk to, and we've seen her have her ups and downs through life and stuff. And so even in the beginning I was like, oh, that's like a template, but it isn't, because MS is so random, right? But so it is the anxiety of kind of what's coming next, but also I think how to adjust, to make to kind of share the things that each partner wants to share together. Like Nicole used to she used to skate competitively, like figure skate and stuff like that. And so that's one thing that MS has kind of taken away. And so how do we get that back? She's recently been like, maybe I can skate backwards,
Oh,
or maybe I can get like some sort of frame built that I can use, like to move across the ice. Like, so, I go cycling, for instance, and I've picked that up this summer for in a long time. And I know she wants to be able to cycle in some way. And so I'm kind of thinking about how can we make that happen? What's a good thing? Is an e-bike a thing? Is a small motorbike a thing we could do in the future or something? But so I think it's always trying to think of how to take part, like, and do the things that we really want to do and do them together,
that's
I
such a
guess.
great love language, Alex.
Mm,
It's like, it's like, okay, we can't do this. So how do we get the same feeling from
mhm,
doing something else? Like it's like, let's be adaptive and creative and realize that it's about moving our bodies or spending time together or being
mhm.
outside. There's not one way to do things. It's like, let's get to the root of what's rewarding about this experience and figure out how to do it together. I love
Yeah,
that. And I know, like, you and I have both also talked before about having this like team approach, and you guys really
yeah.
have that. And it helps. It's just,
It's worked so far.
Oh, I love that. I think it's almost pretty universal that one of the more challenging parts of living with a chronic illness like MS is the fear. We don't know what's coming. We don't know what each day is going to bring. And, once we get some perspective after we've lived with it for a while, there is there is a bit of comfort of, okay, I can do this. Life is going to change. I have lost some things and I need to adapt to some things. And I love that you're both are looking at ways that you just continue and you move on and find ways to live happy with MS. Do you have any tips for our viewers on coping and having a full and happy life with MS?
I think one of the things that I ask myself when I'm really wigging out about future, what comes next, is to ask myself, am I okay in this exact moment right now? And that
Mm,
can be grounding and helpful. And then I also feel like having things to look forward to is super important, and also purpose. So I know Alex and his wife, Nicole, and my husband and I, we travel a lot. That's something we
mhm.
really like to do. And that's something that I would have thought MS would make unavailable to me. And it is more challenging, but it's like anything. As soon as you figure out the hacks and the workarounds, you just,
Yeah.
yeah,
It's travel is fantastic, and it's totally doable. I think MS limits uh some places at some points, right? Like there are barriers, but they're not really made by MS. Like, I mean, we went to Vietnam, we did it. We moved around and stuff. It was incredibly difficult. But I mean, our own city in Toronto is not that great at disability and stuff like that either. So I mean, I guess it's like 6 and 1/2 dozen of the other. But so it's possible, but I think you definitely have to be conscious. So that barrier does exist, but you have to be conscious of what you can do, and I guess how to adapt, which is part of that journey that other people don't have to do. I would say if you have the privilege or the ability or the resources, you should definitely see a therapist. And I think the tools that you get from a good therapist will, everybody needs help, I think. And an objective resource like a therapist or something will be able to give you the tools to ground yourself as well. I think Ardra is a very strong person. We all are very strong and stuff like that, but still, I think the help of a therapist is
Are you
critical
telling
in
me to get
managing that.
therapy, Alex?
No, I'd come to you for therapy. But I mean, yeah,
But you're talking, I just want to clarify that you're
Yeah.
giving this advice to partners and patients, right?
Yeah,
Like
absolutely. I think everybody should go, but I mean, in this context, definitely both partners and people with disabilities would benefit if they do have those resources for sure.
I think partners a lot of times can feel like it's not okay for them to kind of complain about what's going on with them or how MS impacts them, because it can feel like it's about the patient, and it can help to really compartmentalize that MS as like a third person in the marriage and not just like an extension of the person who has the disease, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's why I mean, like, I think I hope that younger generations of people and younger generations of couples are more, it seems people are more open to going to therapy more regularly. So if that's why I said if you do have the resources and stuff, you should definitely go, and you should be open to it if you're not currently because it is a great help. But
Like marriage,
agree.
yeah. Like marriage is tough, right? But when you
Mm.
have MS, it's like you already know what one of the like big sources of stress and expense and conflict that can be. And so knowing that can help you get ahead of it, right? So that you can have strategies for managing it before you're kind of mired in it, if that makes sense.
Totally makes sense. I started seeing a therapist shortly after my diagnosis, and I still see her today. Not as much, but I still see her. And Alex, you're so right. Having that person to talk to who has the outside perspective and has the training and the tools to give us to help us cope. I'm not the only one with MS. My husband lives with this, and we have to cope together, and his struggles are just as real as mine. So having that outside person to help is such a gift that we have given ourselves. And even if people don't have the resources for a therapist, there are resources available through different organizations and different societies that might be able to help. So I'm with you 100%. Getting extra help outside of medical help is really important to living well with this.
Yeah, you live with your brain all the time, so you don't want it to be like bullying you and stuff. But I just also should say, I guess, if you can, again, seek individual and if you have to, like couples as well, because I mean, Nicole and I go separately or have gone separately and stuff, and it's funny. It's kind of one of those businesses that you go because you want to stop going eventually. So if they're good, and you can go to a couple different ones to find a preference, but if they're good, they'll help you get to a point where you do have those tools to manage your emotions, regulate yourself and stuff like that. And it's such a fantastic experience at that point. And I think it does bring both parties together a little bit better as well, because you have a better understanding.
Yeah.
And then, even not everyone who's listening to this is currently in a romantic relationship, even if whether or not you are. Social capital and having people that you can talk to, friends, and that can be something that gets in the way for a lot of people with MS. It's hard to go out, weather, fatigue, whatever. It's really, I think doctors should be prescribing friendship and like social connections, because it's as valuable as anything else. We need people.
Yeah. That's so interesting. They should prescribe social connection along with our DMTs. I love
Totally.
that.
Mm.
So, Audrey, you brought up recently, just a few minutes ago, having a sense of purpose. One of your podcasts recently, the topic was having a sense of purpose and how it's really important to our well being. My channel is all about providing tips and strategies to live well with MS. Can both of you talk a little bit about how having a sense of purpose has helped you and your families?
I think that for so many of us in this North American society, we are raised to think that our purpose is tied to the work that we do, like how we pay the bills. And that's problematic for a number of reasons, but it's especially problematic with a chronic illness like MS, if you happen to find yourself not able to work and feeling really lost and floundering and judged by the world and society. And so I think being really intentional about finding purpose and also finding purpose in as many places as you can so that if you lose it, if it's threatened in one area, whether from ability or life or circumstances, you have all these other sources to draw on. So for me, purpose is about the relationships I have as a friend, as a daughter, as a wife, as an aunt, as a neighbor, as like a citizen of the world. I find purpose in my dog, like being a dog mom, but also in creative pursuits and the things I write, the culture that I consume, the books that I read, all of these things. I'm a big fan of making lists to remind yourself of that. This is in my book too. I think I've had a couple of like MS forced reinventions, and it's you hear about people losing their minds when they retire because they don't know what to do with themselves. And I remember being like 27 and feeling like I can't let that happen to me. And so again, it's like what we were talking about with traveling is figuring out the things the experiences, the activities that fill you up and bring you joy, and then figuring out what it is about that thing that makes you feel good and can you get it somewhere else. So like for me, singing was something that let me use my voice, let me perform, let me be an artist, let me communicate in these ways. It let me be the center of attention and put on a pretty dress, all these things. It let me study language. When I was no longer able to sing, articulating all those things that I got from singing, writing them down, it was like, well, what other activity can I do that meets those needs? And writing, blogging, podcasting, it's has a lot of those things in common.
Yeah, I would tend to agree entirely. I'm a big hobby person. So, and it takes your mind off and it's cathartic, right? Like I used to do woodworking when I had the space for it, and then I didn't. So I picked up podcasting, and I've always played music, and I still make music, and I still play live shows and things like that. And luckily I've had the chance to travel and play music recently, which is really fun. Um, but same thing. I think we spoke about this really early on, Ardra and I, obviously, about hustle culture and making work your identity, and how ridiculous that kind of is. No offense to anybody who thinks that way, but I mean, it's just like I think I described it. I was like, I do my job. That's like the last thing I usually tell people, uh, because it's something I do to fund the other things that are the purpose in my life. Um, and so like with Nicole and I, we have separate purposes. Nicole, she reads an insane amount of books, and she reviews them, and she does a really great job of doing that. And I do my music stuff and the podcast stuff. And so, yeah, I think that's the most important thing for me to cope, is to find distractions that you can focus on and better yourself. And that's it's so true. I talk to my dad all the time about I'm like, you need to retire, like, and or like other, and he's like, I'm not. Why would I retire? I have nothing to do. And I'm like, there's so many
It's
things you can do. Like,
You can love your job. You can love your job and you can find identity
yeah,
with
yeah.
it, but you better have 10 other things that
Yes. So
that
I say that,
define
but
you, right?
yeah,
Because
I'm
it's
not.
not
Yeah,
yeah.
I think the definition, when people define themselves and they kind of make it their whole personality, but then they lose out on
It's
other
dangerous.
things.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so that's the risk that people are taking, and I feel like, again, hopefully the younger people and stuff like that are finding more, they have a bit more time or opportunity to get hobbies and things like that to find some more peace in the long term, right? So, um, it'd be nice. My plan for retirement, I know I'm still kind of young, but my plan is to, I don't know, make pasta, and
Okay.
sell that like boutique wise, that would be one dream. I know it sounds lame, but I just like doing
It
it.
doesn't. It sounds amazing.
But it's cathartic, and it's something we've done. Like, I've done it with Nicole, and I've shared that with friends as well. We used to do that in England with our neighbor. We've done it a couple times, and it was such a fun experience to play music and hang spaghetti from the ceiling and stuff. And it's silly, but it's like it takes your mind off these issues. And yeah, and it's a fun thing to do. So I just want to keep doing those things. I enjoy my job, but I don't make it my whole thing.
I love that. So often people say, "Well, what do you do?" And we answer with our job. Um, I learned many years ago that when people ask me, "What do you do?" my answer is, "I help people." And my current career is I'm a virtual assistant, and it has really helped me with my MS because I do help people. I help my clients, and it gave me a sense of purpose, and I get great satisfaction out of that. And then when I started the YouTube channel and the Facebook group to help people with MS, I'm like, oh, I'm helping people again. I like you, like, have many interests and different purposes. I help my church, I help the local school, I help my neighbors. We kind of have these concentric circles. It starts in our house and goes out to our neighborhood and our local community, and then the greater community. So having that sense of purpose and having multiple avenues to find that sense of purpose is spot on. We can't. Go ahead.
Yeah, I love that you say that, Vickie, because I think for some, like for Alex and I, who are just nerds for doing a lot of stuff, for other people, it can be overwhelming feeling like I don't
Mm,
know what my sense of purpose is. And that's where I say, like, sit down and like you already have purpose in things that you might not recognize as being purposeful, right? And maybe it's like working in your garden or talking to
mm,
your elderly neighbor on the phone once a week, or like all these little things. Just tally them all up and they give you a picture of what your life is and what you want more from your life, right? Like being able to identify the things that make you happy and bring you joy can help you identify other things that will also do that. And it's just we get this shitty MS disease and we think so much is being taken from us, and it can be an opportunity to assess our time and how we really do want to spend it.
mm,
Absolutely. It is a shitty disease, and we can really get to a point where we wallow in all that's happening to us and focus on what MS has taken from us, or what MS might take from us, that scary, fearful thing. But we don't want to wallow in this or ruminate on the challenges all the time.
Yeah. I feel like take that time when you need it,
mm.
and but put a time limit on it. Don't live there,
Yeah.
like grieve and get on with it. Repeat as necessary.
Yep. Yep. Take that time and talk shit about the disease and the symptoms and how hard it is. And then, like you said, set a time limit and say, okay, I'm done with that. Time to move on.
Yeah.
Speaking of time, if you guys could both go back in time and give yourself a bit of advice on living with MS when MS first came into your lives, what would you say to your younger selves?
I kind of feel like it doesn't matter what I could travel back in time, look her right in the face, and she would be like, "What the hell do you know?" It's like, and I kind of have done that with this book. I start it at the time of my diagnosis, and I write it in present tense because I've kept a diary my whole life. You can see like a lot of them on the shelf behind me, but um So I had that experience writing the book of going back and seeing how I processed things in real time. Unfortunately, it's like resilience. I think you have to learn it as you go, I don't know. Alex, what do you think?
Um, I don't know. I thought about this question. If I were to speak to my former self, I think I always remember the moment we were kind of pseudo diagnosed in France, and I was like devastated, right? Like that day. And I think it just kind of was an overwhelming thing to hear because I knew someone with it and I knew it was a shitty thing and I knew it would have a negative impact, right? To an extent. And so I think I would probably just go back and be like, you don't have to be as scared as you think you are now because you'll be able to adapt and because of the person I am now and the person I see, with the things that I do now to accommodate and to work with Nicole through everything. I think I've done a pretty decent job. Like, there's not much, I don't know how much better I could possibly be in the context given the resource. And she's done a lot.
I love your self-confidence, Alex.
I mean,
I just want to
but
but
it's
if you went
because of
back and said that, would your younger, stupider self would have been like, get out of here.
No, he would have been like, get out of here. I'm
Yeah.
going to be better than you and stuff like that, which is probably great, but without the toxicity involved and stuff like that, it's part of that. Like I said, going to therapy has helped me realize, it's a bit more self actualization, right? I have my own things going on. I'm also able to help Nicole wherever I need to or wherever she needs help and stuff like that, if that's the case. But we work together. It's a good, it's a great partnership. And so I don't think I'd have anything that impactful to say. I said, maybe don't be as afraid as you think you are.
Oh, I love that. I often think about what I would say to my younger self in that moment that I heard those words, "You have MS." And I think the only thing I would say to her is it's going to be okay. And it's okay to grieve. And it's gonna take time, and you're gonna feel all the emotions, and that's okay. And you're gonna make it through. It's gonna be okay. It's not gonna be all right, but it's going to be okay. The name of my channel is Even So, It Is Well. And that's a reminder to me that, no matter what happens, even so, I have symptoms and there may be progression and there may be things in my future that I don't want. I'm going to be okay. And I wish I could go back and reassure that younger person that she's going to be okay.
I feel like for me, and maybe this is like the difference between mourning the old me and having anxiety over future me, but I feel like the more useful application of this like theoretical time travel is to go and talk to future Ardra,
Oh.
and also just like don't waste what you have going on now, because someday you're going to be like, oh my God, the things were so much easier then. But also like, go talk to future Ardra and just chill her out a little bit.
That's a good point.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for being with me today. This has been so awesome. I absolutely adore the podcast. Tell people where they can find you.
Anywhere you get your pods, and also the video version is on YouTube. So it's called Tripping on Air. Just like the blog, we have a big holiday gift guide episode coming up with some pretty sick giveaways. So you'll want to check that out for sure. But yeah, Tripping on Air.
Awesome. And I will also put links in the description below where you can pre-order Ardra's book, Fall-osophy, Tripping on My Trip Through Life. Tell me again.
Yeah. Just like the website, the tagline is My Trip Through Life with MS. So it's Fall-osophy, not spelled like falafel, but like
Fall, F-A-L-L.
Fall, F-A-L-L.
I'll also put an image on the book on the screen so people can see it.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
And now I'm going to go get some falafels, actually.
So. All right. Thanks again. Thank you, everybody, for joining us for the interview today. You can support this channel by sharing the videos, liking, and subscribing. Until next time, be well.